I am muted on one spot. Welcome to Mindful Moments. I am live on YouTube and Instagram. And thank you for technology of letting me know when there is a situation. So I was muted, but I'm here. And I'm Tawana. And every Thursday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, we pause on purpose to get honest about what's really going on inside and really to rebuild how we lead, how we live, how we love. And this is going from a form of what we've been surviving to what we can actually sustain. And so I want us all to take a moment for whatever you're coming in with your lunch or tea, whatever you're taking a moment from and a break from, but take a moment to breathe and make space to hear God just really louder than the noise all around us. And so we're going to just jump right in. Anyone that's jumping in or on watching on the replay, I would love for you to comment where you're from, comment how this may have resonated with you, share it if you're on with another person so that they can join as well. But have you ever really broken down the phrase, the benefit of the doubt? That's what the title of this is. And I just want to ask, have you ever really broken that phrase down? Like, to give someone the benefit of the doubt is actually an oxymoron sounding phrase. Like, because typically, when you doubt, it's not very beneficial. And you may have doubts of someone following through on their word. You may have doubts system or a plan. You may have doubts in an object of being reliable, and these doubts are not favorable. But to give the benefit of the doubt is suggesting that the doubt be given in the favor of another, outside of yourself. The actual definition of the phrase to give the benefit of the doubt is choosing to believe something good, trusting even when you have uncertainty, rather than immediately assuming the worst. Now, I have two coaching conversations this past week and or recently, and where the almost identical situation came up. Both individuals were trying to decide their next steps in a relationship based on a situation that occurred, right? And so the issue resided in their thoughts and decisions because it was being very one-sided. One-sided meaning on their side. And this was heavily saturated in doubt, and it was not given benefit at all. So situation number one was a instance where an assumption was being made about the other person's feelings because they didn't respond with the words that the person needed to hear in order to feel seen. But here's the thing, that person never communicated the words that they needed. They just assumed that the other person knew because it was something that was common to them. They assumed that the other person just knew, and then they decided not to respond. Therefore, the conclusion was made that they don't care. And then in scenario number two, it was the same pattern. A text conversation happened, but an assumption was made that based on the other person's lack of response, and again, the conclusion, they don't care. In both situations, the doubt was certainly there, but there was no giving of benefits at all. And so remembering the definition is giving the benefit of the doubt is choosing to believe something is something good, trusting even when you have uncertainty. The point I was trying to make, and the point that I am making with the definition, is that it's a choice. Some choices are easy and some choices are hard. So, why is it so hard to make this choice? Why do we struggle with believing something good and trusting? Why do we instinctively resist trust when trust is a choice? It's a tongue twister. Trust is a choice. So, my background is in psychology, and I am truly fascinated on how the brain works cognitively and how we behave. And I taught science for years. So, making the biological connection is considered a fun evening for me. And so, call me a nerd or call me the life of the party. Either way, when it comes to understanding how we function and how we behave, I'm totally locked in and I'm taking you on the ride with me. And so, have you ever noticed how one negative comment sticks with you longer than 10 compliments? Or like my two coaching clients incidents where we assumed the worst before even having all the facts. Like you're not just being dramatic. Our brains are wired with something called cognitive bias. And that's helpful because we need our brains to be complex. Like we're bombarded with lots of information on a daily basis. And cognitive bias is really a shortcut for our brain to protect us. It gives a shortcut for protection, for efficiency, for filtering through information and analyzing things. And so it's very helpful that our brain does have this capability because it is very complex. And we're bombarded with information on the daily basis, and we don't have time to analyze every single small piece. But here's the problem: these shortcuts don't always tell the full truth. It's a bias to you, cognitive bias, a shortcut. And shortcuts don't always allow us to see everything that there is to see. And deep logical reasoning takes effort. So the brain leans in on these shortcuts most of the time. um, and so, what I want to do now is just really thank you for focusing on this mindful moment because right now you are pushing past what your brain instinctively wants to do. You are pushing past taking a shortcut. You are pushing past conserving energy. You are bypassing the option of opting out of having deep thought. You are going into that space of having deep thought. You're taking control and giving your brain an experience with more context and more content so that it can do its job for you more efficiently, and not just based on survival, because that's what our brain focuses on. It focuses on surviving. It focuses on what can I do to make sure that you are protected. And so now you're taking a moment to give your brain an opportunity to have more context that will push past survival and fear and build you on sustainability and truth. And I think I see one of my former students in there, and I want to say, hey. All right. So our past experiences don't just shape our actionable future, right? They also shape our beliefs and our perceptions, which then contribute to our behavior, like we just saw in those instances. And this is where what's called cognitive bias comes in, and these biases show up very differently. For example, when one painful memory or a negative comment outweighs all of the positive ones, that's called a negative bias. And your brain shortcuts and remembers what made you feel uneasy, and then it associates similar situations with that one experience. So instead of thinking through and thinking about the possibilities that it could be different, your brain's like, nope, no, it's not. It's not different. Do everything to avoid this feeling. And somebody may have made a negative comment about your features before, and now you do everything you can to address that feature, to eliminate anyone ever noticing what you have perceived as a flaw. And when somebody comes to you and calls you beautiful or recognizes that feature as a beauty, you think, oh, they're just being nice. But there's also the availability bias, where the most recent or the most vivid memory becomes the one you assume to be most common. If a person messed up last week, even if it was just your perception of a mess up, because let's be honest, maybe you didn't even give the benefit of the doubt last week, and now your interactions are just stuck on repeat. And so I'm just saying, and I don't mean you by you, I mean like in general. But if I'm being real honest, I really do mean you, because I mean me too, because we all do it. We all have done it. But that one mess up becomes easier to recall than all the times that they didn't mess up. And it's available. So now our brain assumes that the mess up you define as a pattern and you act accordingly. And you keep acting accordingly based on that one mess up that you perceive to be a pattern of behavior. And now there is the excuse me, the impression of failure, or even what you perceive to be a failure because of your anchor. Like that's what you've held on to. And that's called an anchoring bias. And you keep measuring that person against it. And once you believe something in a person, like they don't value me, you'll look for proof for everything they do that validates that, even if it's in a neutral action. And so, like my two coaching clients that I was just mentioning earlier, both ladies went through a varying of these levels of cognitive bias. They made conclusions without even further having further conversations with the other person. Their conclusion was one sided, the very definition of a bias. And in both cases, they had an experience with the other person without the other person even being present. Their encounter was with the person that they created through their cognitive bias. And that actually sounds kind of ridiculous and crazy when we say it out loud or when we even hear it out loud, but yet we still do it. It's almost like watching a TV show and there's a character in the show that you have grown to dislike because of their behavior in the show. And now you develop a dislike for that actual person who played that character. But spoiler alert, that's not them. That's their character. And when we develop conclusions about others through our biases without, at the very least, having a conversation, without giving the benefit of the doubt, we are essentially conducting our actions toward that person on the basis of the character that they played in our mind. Now, the kids, the generation said, I can say clock that, and that's clockable. So clock that. And what I want to ask, when we do that, when we create a character and we have an experience with that character in our mind, and now we develop a bias, or we develop our actions based on the person that we've created in our mind, where's the benefit in that? Like, who benefits from that? You certainly don't. You block yourself from the possibility of new, from the possibility of joy, from the possibility of change, and you block them from the opportunity of experiencing you, because you too are a gift. Your encounter with other people is a gift too. And so nobody benefits from that. And our brains, like I mentioned, is so complex, no doubt. And it does a great job for working with us. But hear me when I say this, it's a muscle, it is not your mind. And like other muscles, we have to train it, we have to work it. So, just like in both cases of those coaching scenarios, I'm offering the possibility of introducing the thought of doubt to your brain differently. Doubt in favor of something that sustains you and not something that you have to survive. Because remember, your brain is already wired and programmed to create survival mechanisms for you. But I'm offering you the opportunity to dive in just a little bit deeper and give your brain another option, give your brain another experience so that it can push you into something that's more sustainable, and give your brain of thinking about the benefit of the doubt. So, what does the word of God have to say? Because that's why we're here, right? And I'm so glad you asked that. If we look at, excuse me, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 2 and 3 in the NIV version, it says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So the scripture says, make every effort, which means you have to be intentional. You have to make a choice. Don't just do what comes natural. Then it says, through the bond of peace. Peace is the key. Peace is the key here. And not just your peace. Like, not because we say the things like, I'm just protecting my peace, but not really, because it still bothers us. We're still talking about it, and that's not very peace protecting. If we haven't had a conversation for understanding, if we haven't made the effort, that's not peace bonding. It's actually trauma bearing. And yes, I made that word up. But what it actually means, and that is you're using trauma as an excuse, as a block. You're using it as your co-defendant. And then we begin to trauma bond just to validate our cognitive bias. And again, who benefits from that? So to make every effort takes humility and patience. And this makes me think of a story with my youngest daughter, a situation where my youngest daughter was venting to me about her friend. And her friend was annoying her and getting on her nerves. And she said, "It's aggravating, Mom, because she knows better." To which I responded, "So she's better than you." And she cut her eyes and looked at me like, she was like perturbed and she was very offended by the question. And she quickly said, "No, no, she's not better than me." So I asked her, have you ever gotten on my nerves?" And so she was still like screw facing me a little bit, and probably in the sense of knowing that there was a lesson coming, but she wasn't quite caught on to where this lesson was going. So she answered real irritatedly and was like, "Yeah." Then I asked her, "And you know better?" And then she responded with the obvious, "Yeah." Then I said, "Then she must be better than you, because she should have behaved better because she can control herself and you can't control yourself. So she's better than you." The point I was trying to make with my daughter, and the point that I'm making here, is give people the same grace you want. Give people the same opportunity that you desire. Don't expect perfection from others when you can't even expect it from yourself. And if you didn't hear me and it didn't click, that's okay. Go back and hear it again. It certainly has been repeated in scripture, not just because we're stubborn, but because God is patient, and he's very patient with us. And so turn to me to Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 15. And that's in the NLT version. And it says, "Since God chose you to be holy people he loves, you must clothe yourself with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults." Let's pause right there for a second, because that right there, my friend, is the benefit of the doubt. And then it continues and says, "And forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. And let the peace that comes from Christ," not your version of peace, the peace that comes from Christ, not the "I'm just keeping the peace," the peace that comes from Christ, "rule in your hearts, for as members of the body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful." That's done, right? But let me pause right there for just a moment, because I know that somebody is thinking, but what about the people who truly hurt me? Those who cross the line, those who created real danger, those who are a danger in my life. Am I supposed to just act like that nothing happened? Am I supposed to just let them back in? No, heaven forbid, no. Forgiveness and harmony doesn't always mean reconciliation. Forgiveness doesn't mean you put yourself back in harm's way. But what it does mean is that you release the hold of the offense that it has on you, that it has on your heart. You don't let anger or hatred sit in the driver's seat of your daily actions. You don't let what someone has done to you dictate how you behave and show up everywhere or against everyone. Forgiveness is saying, "God, I trust you. I trust you enough to carry what they did, and I'm not carrying it anymore. It's the same grace that saved me that I am trusting is the same grace that can be extended to them. But I will not take their actions let their actions dictate my peace." And that's what Colossians was pointing out when it says, "Let the peace of Christ rule your hearts." That's that peace that surpasses all understanding. And sometimes harmony comes in different forms. Sometimes harmony comes in reconciliation, a conversation, an understanding, a restoration. Other times, harmony comes in a form of release. Being thankful that God gave you wisdom through that situation, clarity through that situation, peace to overcome that situation, to move forward without the weight of bitterness holding you down. The real challenge if I'm being honest, as we're going through this, I think the real challenge that we face in this is we withhold the benefit of the doubt because we don't extend the same grace to others that we already received, or that we desperately desire that others extend to us. We don't feel like they deserve it because at some point in life, we've decided that we hold the key of judgment for that. And so we say, well, they don't deserve that. But we forget there's a lot of things we didn't deserve either, but God still gave us grace. And so that's the challenge that we struggle with. And it's not about if they deserve it, because you can't dictate that. It's more about loving like Jesus, about that love that's sacrificial. And sometimes that sacrifice is not things like money or time or convenience. Sometimes that sacrifice is cognitive biases. Laying down your assumptions for your laying down your first impression, laying down your hurt lens so that you can see someone in a way that God sees them. Because you can think about, there's a possibility that something happened in their life too that has made them show up the way that they do. Life didn't start when they met you. Your life didn't start when you met them. So thinking about that. But who really, again, benefits when you give the benefit of the doubt? It's not just the other person, it's you too. Relationships soften when you do it, trust deepens when you do it, and your own well being is a little bit lighter when you are not holding everybody hostage to suspicion. That is weight bearing when you are suspicious of everything and everybody you come in contact with. When you give somebody the benefit of the doubt, you're leaving room for the possibility of what God has done in them. Just like you want people to leave room for the possibility of what God has done in you. And this shows up in everyday situations and everyday scenarios. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention it in a parent and a child relationship. Sometimes giving your child the benefit of the doubt means letting go of your pride long enough so that you can actually have a real conversation requiring listening and hearing what the other person has to say, because it also is remembering that they don't have all of the knowledge and the wisdom and the life experience that you have. Giving them the benefit of the doubt is giving them space to grow. Giving others the benefit of the doubt is giving them space to grow. Giving others the benefit of the doubt is giving you space to grow, because you also need to give yourself the same benefit of the doubt. Trust yourself that you can make good decisions, that you are capable of growing, that you are growing. Trust yourself that God is still doing a work in you. You're not finished. You're continuously becoming, and every experience helps you to develop in your becoming. And so, giving your brain, again, the opportunity of getting new context and new content to be able to do its job efficiently and move you in a way that's sustainable and not just focused on survival. And this is the point that Colossians 3 was pointing out to us: letting peace rule in your heart, putting on compassion, humility, and love that binds it all together. And if we are reflecting back on a previous scripture that I mentioned in other mindful moments in First Corinthians chapter 13, where it talks about love is patient, love is kind, all of those things that you typically hear in a wedding ceremony. But this is important for this. In the chapter 13, it says that love believes all things and hopes all things. And that is truly the benefit of the doubt in action. So maybe this week you practice this, and it's simple. Before you assume the worst, pause and ask yourself, am I willing to sacrifice my bias and give my brain the tools to help me sustain and not just survive? Because the benefit of the doubt doesn't just restore relationships, it actually sustains your peace. It actually sustains you. So, again, this week, before you act, ask yourself, am I willing to sacrifice my bias to give my brain the tools to help me sustain and not just survive? I'm telling y'all, when I went through this for myself, that was a moment. I hope that this resonated with someone on here, whether you're listening on live or you listened on the replay. Please be sure to comment and let me know how this is operating for you. But until then, I will see you next week on Thursday, same day of the week, same time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time for another mindful moment. I want to make sure that you be sure to subscribe for any updates if any changes happen, but also share this with your crew if it helped you. Don't gatekeep. Pass it on if it's something that you heard that you feel like someone else needs to hear. Maybe it's something that you want to say, but you can't say or you don't feel like saying. Go ahead and pass it on. Hey, go ahead and pass it on to them. But until next week, I want to thank you for joining. Thank you for taking this moment with me, and God bless.